Clearing my throat. Excuse me. Hi, I'm Hannah Rodriguez. I'm a psychotherapist in Texas and Colorado, and I work with survivors of trauma, narcissistic abuse, emotional abuse, gaslighting, toxic workplace environments, and neurodivergent trauma survivors. So today, aka going back, aka I affectionately call my population creative empaths because creativity is a huge resource to healing from abuse, neglect, and other forms of trauma. So today I have 3 tips to help you heal from narcissistic abuse or other forms of abuse. And I also wanted to share some of the information I'm learning about the current research on personality disorders, just because I find it interesting and helpful to people who are recovering survivors, to help you understand and gain a frame of reference for what happened to you if this is something that you experienced. So leave me a comment below if you like this video or find anything useful and helpful. I'd love to hear your perspective if there's anything that you want to share. Of course, your privacy is always respected, so take that into consideration. Please don't share anything sensitive that could cause issues. With that out of the way, please note that this is also my personal views and opinion based on my lived experience, being a clinician that helps people, and also the research that I have read. And information changes over time, so what I'm saying here today might not be as accurate compared to like what comes down the line tomorrow in the future. So please know that our information, we do the best we can with the information that we have now, and I'm just a human, I'm just a person, so I don't know everything. I'm just sharing what I have learned. So please always use discretion before applying information to yourself or people in your life. So without further ado, I wanted to talk a little bit about what a personality disorder is and the spectrum of narcissism. First of all, narcissism is a part of the natural human psyche, and I believe that from like a Jungian, Carl Jung said that there's like every person has an aspect of narcissism in their life, and part of our life goal is to individuate and to expose the shadow self, and that means taking accountability and being radically honest with ourselves about who we are and our mistakes and imperfections. So I view narcissism as a spectrum, and I view narcissism as kind of like a self-referential defense mechanism. So anybody can have some narcissism. It's a desire to protect oneself, and when it becomes a very strong part of the personality, it can lead to problems like manipulation, lying, gaslighting, denying and attacking others, and reversing the victim and offender. And so we have to keep our narcissism in check, right? Like narcissism, it can be on a healthy level, in my opinion. Like the desire to survive and the desire to stay alive in life has to do with narcissism. But when it grows in scale and becomes like a predominant part of the identity and the self, that's when it becomes a problem, because it leads to those abusive behaviors instead of being balanced out by self accountability um, and care and nurturance for other people, like putting other people before the self. We need reciprocity in our relationships. So it's healthy for two people to have a dialogue and have a back and forth about like what reality is whenever there's a conflict. But people who are narcissistic or predominantly narcissistic refuse to acknowledge the reality of the other. They refuse to be involved in a dialogue of truth telling. So they want to rewrite the narrative. They want to have the only pen in the relationship. They want to be in charge of exactly what is believed about different situations. And it can lead to more defense mechanisms. We can talk more about this later, but I want to get down to what survivors need to know, the 3 tips for healing from narcissistic abuse. So, oh man, I had one more thing I wanted to say. So there's a spectrum of narcissism, and at the very end, at the very highest, most severe form of narcissism, we don't like the population numbers are very small. So it may be around like 1% of the population has severe malignant narcissism. These are people like serial killers or like abusers or people with like sociopathy with like just very extreme antisocial behaviors. But again, it's a spectrum. So as we get closer to the middle of the population, we have more mild forms of narcissism, which people can, it can cause problems, but people are able to function and maintain like a job or maintain relationships, even if they have, you know, a problematic level of narcissism. So even if we say it's mild narcissism, it's still problematic. It can still be hurtful and traumatizing. So I've heard other therapists say not to use mild narcissism as a classifier, which is fine in a clinical sense. But for me, we're just talking. It's just my personal perspective. So that's how I look at it. So the 3 tips that I wanted to share with creative empaths who are healing from narcissistic abuse. Number 1, we want to talk about individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming a whole adult version of ourselves. And what often happens to us in narcissistic relationships is that it kind of puts us into like the child ego state of like letting the abusive person talk down to us and tell us what our reality is and shame us and blame us and scapegoat us. So individuation is the ability to have like a blank wall between you and that other person, and saying, no, I know my reality. I know who I am. I know what's true. And I don't care what you say about me because I know myself. I know what's true for me. And being able to stand on that business without letting them affect your self-perspective and your self-esteem and be clouded by all the gaslighting. So the next tip is learning how to be gaslight free. So it builds on the process of individuation, but being gaslight free is kind of like a term that I came up with that means that you reject the gaslighting whenever a narcissist or a problematic person comes and tries to tell you what you think, what you believe, what your intentions were, or like what's in your head or how you should feel. Recognize that as what it is. That's gaslighting. And you can internally label those things as gaslighting. You don't have to say it out loud, but just recognize, oh, they're gaslighting me right now. I'm not going to listen. And imagine, this comes from Lisa Arono, a breakthrough life coach. She talks about a lot of trauma recovery stuff, but she calls it going shutty, which means like you're closing the windows of your eyes, you're closing the windows of your ears, and you're not letting in the gaslight because you recognize it's not true. They're manipulating me. They're trying to play this cat and mouse game with my emotions, because their ultimate goal is control and power and domination. And ultimately, they want to be in control of the narrative. And I am not going to let them gaslight me into giving up my side, my perspective. So it's a lot of boundary work. It's a lot of grounding yourself in your own identity and developing the confidence and the tolerance to be able to sit in that discomfort and say, no, I'm not going to let you gaslight me. I'm not going to let you control what I think about myself or what I think about this issue, this conflict that we're having. Third, self-protection. So empaths, especially women, we are essentially taught not to protect ourselves. We are taught to defer to other people, make ourselves smaller, check our own egos, and put other people before ourselves. And which, those are wonderful qualities. Those are wonderful things to do in healthy relationships, in reciprocal relationships. But that is a target that a manipulative person will try to use against you. They'll try to weaponize that quality against you, in order to, they'll act entitled to you giving up yourself, giving up your safety, giving up your needs, giving up your emotional well-being or your perspective in order to serve them, in order to appease them. So we need to develop, again, it goes back to that individuation, grounding in our own identity, recognizing that you matter, your feelings matter, your needs matter, you have worth and value, and this is not an appropriate time for you to defer to somebody else, to defer your own truth, or defer or submit to this other person's arrogance or domination of your perspective. So it takes a lot of inner strengthening, inner boundary work. It's not an easy process. These are countercultural messages that I'm telling you here. It's asking you to stand up and do something that you've never done before, and possibly have maybe even gotten in trouble for trying to self-protect, especially if you're a woman or someone in a more submissive role in your life. So standing up and having those self-preservation self-protection, self-defense boundaries is going to feel really hard, and it's going to feel foreign and strange and kind of scary. But once you start setting those boundaries, it's going to change the dynamic. It's going to kind of close you off from that person. It's going to make you not as easily manipulated, not as easy target. So that you got to expect that they're going to escalate and get frustrated. So you got to think about your safety. And after the first time you start setting boundaries, you're flipping the script, you are changing the dynamic, you're empowering yourself. It's hard the first couple of times, but eventually it becomes the new normal. And that person, depending on what kind of relationship you have, they may simply like let go of you because you've stopped being an easy target for them, and they'll move on, and you'll get to have the space that you need to heal yourself. Again, it's easier said than done, and you really got to think about your safety first, because again, it's predictable that they will escalate and they will try to hurt you for changing the dynamic. So leave me a comment, let me know, did any of this information help you with a certain situation that you may be in? Of course, think about your privacy and your self-preservation. Please don't share things that could get you in trouble, or things that could get you potentially harmed by anyone else. But general comments are okay. So, and if you want to learn more about my work, you can look at my website, sunbloomcounseling.com. I have an art blog called My Sketchbook, where I explore trauma recovery from a creative arts perspective, and I offer EMDR for trauma survivors, and lots of psychoeducation blogs and vlogs just like this. So check it out. I'd love it for you to follow and stay in touch. Until next time, bye.